Welcome to TPGI's Real People, Real Stories podcast, where you'll find interesting and diverse stories from folks working to make the world a more inclusive place.
Hey, welcome to the Real People, Real Stories podcast, brought to you by TPGI. I am your host, Mark Miller, thanking you for helping us keep it accessible. Do us a favor. If you're enjoying Real People, Real Stories podcast, share it. Tell someone about it. Hey, even link to it from your accessible website. My favorite subject today, gaming. We have with us Sightless Combat. Sightless Combat. How you doing?
Hello. Sorry. I stepped on your intro there. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. No, well, my intro was to say hi to you. You step away. You can do whatever you want.
Well, hello, everyone. I am Sightless Combat. I am the Accessible Gaming Officer for RNIB, that is Royal National Institute of Blind People, the UK-based sight loss charity. I am a gamer without sight. I have no sight whatsoever, never have. And you will know me from speaking at conferences, doing presentations over the years, consulting on games like God of War Ragnarok, Gears 5, Sea of Thieves, Killer Instinct. Sorry, I mean Killer Instinct. And amongst many others, of course. And I stream on Twitch and on YouTube, write accessibility reviews, and I play far too many video games, I think is the general consensus. And for those of you that can see, or those of you that can't, rather, I have loads and loads of pop vinyls, figures, other memorabilia and things. And I'm a white male in my late 20s wearing an RNIB DFEG, that is Designed for Every Gamer cap, as a part of my dress for today, shall we say.
Well, beautiful. And thank you for telling us everything that you do. As I said at the beginning, this is such an exciting subject for me because I'm an OG gamer from back. From being a kid. Like I literally started with Pong. Mid-90s, I was online. I was playing first-person shooters, the whole 9 yards. So it just is. It's so exciting for me to be talking to you. And I've sat with many people at CSUN and tackled this exact subject, probably not near as well as you have in your past. So let's just start from the beginning, like how, particularly for people out there that may not understand fully or appreciate fully how a person who's blind even interacts with a computer. How does a young man who's blind develop such an interest in gaming, and what was that like for you as a kid before there were people like yourselves out there doing what they could to make gaming accessible?
Wow, that's a lot of questions. Let's try it.
Yeah, you can handle it.
Okay, yeah, let's try it. So my gaming journey, if you will, starts many years ago, playing PC games like Fighter Pilot, which I did a lot of research, or a fair amount of research on later, and discovered it was an EA budget title from, I think, the early 2000s.
Was that at the Microsoft?
No, that wasn't.
Oh, that was Fighter Ace was Microsoft.
Maybe. Yeah, I think I'm sure that I think they did one called. I think Microsoft did one called Combat Flight Simulator. That's the one that I remember. But Fighter Pilot was different. Fighter Pilot was an EA thing.
Okay.
And the fun thing about it was I had no idea how tech worked, how screen readers worked. I didn't even know screen readers existed at that point. So I was literally just nosediving planes into unseen territory.
So it was all an audio thing for you. You were just listening to the plane like
kind of. It was just like, fire missiles, and it's like, you press and hold space and you just hear the machine guns just it's like, okay, this is cool. But I didn't really understand it. It was just me kind of playing around with video game stuff and not really knowing how it worked. Pole Position, I sort of have vague memories of playing a strange version of that under Windows.
So Pole Position was a car racing game, right?
Yeah, Pole Position was a 1980s arcade game.
Yeah.
But there was a weird Windows version. I can't even remember which version it was I actually played, but it was a PC version of that. from very blurry memories. But the point being, I had no idea how any of it worked. And then I got introduced to PC audio games specifically, I should say. Got introduced to audio games, and I played a very a very cool title that. I mean, I don't think it's aged too badly over the past 20 odd years, and it's Grizzly Gulch Western Extravaganza. Now,
Oh my gosh, I've
yeah,
never heard of that. What is that?
it was developed by a company called Bavisoft, who have been long discontinued. They also developed a game called Chillingham, which was like a horror themed
Mm-hmm.
thing. Unfortunately, Chillingham, there was meant to be a Chillingham 2, but that never happened. So there's this big cliffhanger, and it's like to be continued, and it's like, well, no, it's not because there's no sequel.
To
But
be
Grizzly
continued.
Gulch,
No, not really. Sorry.
exactly. It's
Just
like
kidding.
those videos. It's like those videos you see on YouTube. 7 unresolved cliffhangers that we wish would be resolved, or whatever.
Uh,
It's like those. But Grizzly
but you
Gulch,
said it was
thankfully,
Sightless Combat. You said it was all audio. The whole game was
yeah.
audio.
So this is what I was going to say. So Grizzly
Okay.
Gulch didn't thankfully suffer the cliffhanger fate of Chillingham, but it was a 4 or 5 key, if you count the spacebar, adventure game, literally just using the arrows. So it was essentially a point and click in a way. So it would be you'd have a character who'd say where to, and you'd go through, and it'd be like the bank, saloon, marshal's office, hotel, general store,
got it.
etc. Because it was set in this.
I like the accent. That's very well done.
It was set in the eponymous Wild West town of Grizzly Gulch.
Yeah.
You'd come into it and you'd be like, "Hey, I'm Sherman. Welcome to the town of Grizzly Gulch." And it's like, okay, and you'd go through, and it's you'd get these strange missions from the marshal, and be like, let me see if I can do it. It's like, seems finger licking Freddy's been out stealing chickens from old man Morton's chicken coop again. It's like it's these.
That is fantastic.
It's these real like cheesy characters. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm Doug. Welcome to the slot machine. And it's just this eclectic cast of characters, and you'd go through getting into gambling, gunfights, and bribery. All great things to learn from a young age. No, of course they're not.
Staples, really.
Well, I mean, depends who you're asking and whether they've played Grand Theft Auto or not.
Yeah, right. It makes Grand Theft Auto look, or Grand Theft Auto makes it look like church, probably.
Well, no, not really. But it's a fun game. It's relatively short. I remember it being arguably quite difficult way back when, because there's one mission that doesn't have a lot of checkpoints. It's like the final one in the entire game. You have to go and catch this guy called Murdering Sam, because of course he's called Murdering Sam.
Right.
Yeah, so I played that. I played other games around that time, and had a great time with it. But the problem was that sighted people just didn't want to engage with that, because essentially audio games are just a black screen with a logo, and that of course isn't very appealing when you've got stuff like, I don't know, the things I graduated to next, which were Tekken, Street Fighter EX plus Alpha, PlayStation 1 games, and that was mostly just to integrate with sighted people. So I wouldn't have any idea of how the move lists work. I'd be like, how did I just do that amazing thing?
Yeah.
And then they're like, I don't know, because it's just showing a red and a yellow arrow and a green fist. It's like, I have no idea what that means.
Well, you bring an interesting point up. Like when we think about accessibility, like in our industry, like one of the obviously the big sort of mantra is equivalency, right? And it's not
parity, yeah.
Yeah, or parity, and it's not separate. It's not like here's the game for you, blind guy, you go play this one, and all us sighted people are going to go over here and play this one. The idea is that we can all should be able to participate in the same things. So early on, you're kind of like almost discovering that, like, this works really well for me, but my sighted friends want to go off and do something else. And I would imagine that's why you started shifting into other games, is because that was what your friends who had sight were doing, right?
Well, kind of, but it was also that people would say to me, "Oh, do you want to play this?" And I'm like, "I'll give it a go." Like I've still got copies of oh god, it was one of the Jedi Knight games, I think. I can't remember which one it was. I'd have to go and find it. But I've still got copies of that, and I didn't really understand how it works, at the time. But it was good fun. It was like, I enjoy Star Wars, and it's like I can sort of. I like the sound design for this, or the music for this, or whatever. So sometimes you had to take what you could get. But PS1 games, that started me on my fighting game journey. And then I went from there through various iterations of consoles, and now we come to modern day where I'm in PS5 and Xbox Series X land.
Right.
So where things have
So-
changed a heck of a lot since, in the intervening years.
When is the first time that you ran across a game that started to become sort of an equivalency where you were doing something very similar to your sighted peers, or at least
Uh,
a hint of that,
oh, I mean, I'm not really too sure, because accessibility has given that equivalence, that parity
Mhm.
almost. Not completely, not fully yet. We're not there yet, unfortunately. But once I don't know. I think if I had to pick out a moment, it would probably be with Killer Instinct, where I was online fighting people, and I then started to do okay, and it was like, oh, this
Is
is
that a
amazing.
first-person shooter,
No,
RPG?
no, Killer Instinct is a fighter. It's a classic fighter from the
Oh, okay.
90s.
Like Mortal Kombat style.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
era, but not that style, because KI is very much a game of fluid combos, and you can break it pretty much any time. It's the one where combo breaker comes from. It's that one. So you'll have heard that booming across arcades, and they did a version of it for Xbox One when that launched. And I mean, I'd played games like Mortal Kombat 9, Mortal Kombat vs DC Universe, those kinds of things with
Mhm.
people. I do remember blurrily having an interaction with a person where I said, I'm blind, I can't see. And they're like, you what? So
Excuse me?
they were very frustrated, I think, by the fact that they just got utterly annihilated by somebody who couldn't see. At least that's the way I remember it. Whether that's entirely accurate, I'm not 100% sure, because it's been many years. But KI was really one of the first games where I felt like I had a chance, but it wasn't because of
Yeah.
accessibility, really. It was because of sound design. So,
Okay, that's interesting.
well, because it was well, I guess you could call that unintended accessibility. So it was fluids, the sound was moving everywhere. I could hear fireballs traveling, those kinds of things.
Oh.
So
So they
know,
actually did such a good
yeah.
job in creating an environment and a soundscape that you were able to a degree, interact with that in the way that you might interact with your own environment, and use sound as an indicator of where something might be, how far away it is, how fast it's traveling.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, full disclosure, I did then reach out via the Ultra Combo forums and say, I'm playing this game without sight. I would love to be able to do better at this, but the key thing that's missing is the combo gauge. Because as a sighted
Mhm.
player, you see a bar on the side of the screen, if memory serves, and that bar indicates whether you're going to drop your combo or not, or how high it is up that sort of bar. And as a sighted player, you can just see it, optimize your combo, drop it, or like hit it, and you're done. You get damage out of it.
Mhm.
When you're a gamer without sight like myself, you have no idea of that, because when I was playing it, there was no sound cue for that. There was nothing
Right.
there. So I was getting utterly obliterated by people because they could see their little combo gauge and they could
Yeah.
end it. And I'm like,
What's
that's
going
really
on? How is this
frustrating.
happening to me?
It's like, why? It's like, I can't be that bad, can I? And then I realized I was at first. But then I also realized that half the problem was that I couldn't actually end my combos optimally. So I reached out and basically said,
Give
this
me a
is
sound
here's
cue.
well, here's a bunch of things that we could do. So
Mhm.
one was clipboard reading, one was like with a screen reader. So it would, well, not even clipboard reading, but TTS basically of
Mhm.
any kind to make the menus narrated. That sadly didn't happen. But what did was what became the HUD meter volume slider. And the best part of that was that got introduced in a patch for a beta character. So this was, I want to say, like September of 2015, when Rash came out in beta,
Okay.
the Battletoads character.
Mhm.
Yes, there is a Battletoad in Killer Instinct. Yes, it's strange. Yes, he's kind of broken-ish. And yeah, but that's a whole other story. But he came out into beta, and myself and Jukesy and I go way back. He's a fellow gamer without sight, long-time sparring partner in Killer Instinct, Gears 5 player alongside myself, all sorts of stuff. But he and I played that, and we noticed night and day difference. And I've got video footage on YouTube of almost the before and after. So you can see like the footage before where there was no cue, and then you can see the footage afterwards where they'd added that audio in. not as like a single video necessarily,
Mm-hmm.
but there is beta footage that I got deliberately on that day. And I was like, this is brilliant. Like, I wasn't recording our reactions at the time because I didn't have the setup to do it. But I was like, this is amazing. We're actually able to figure out how combos work. Yay!
Yeah, that's
And
awesome.
that was night and day difference. We played for hours on that, and it was phenomenal just to be able to understand, I dropped my combo, that is bad, or like you dropped yours, I can counter you, or whatever it happens to be, or you're doing too many heavies, you're doing too many lights, and it's all because of that feedback that it gives you. And that's where the parity comes in. Like, I've fought people with sight. I had the great fortune, a couple of times, to fight the wonderful man, myth, the legend that is Ken Lobb. He of GoldenEye development fame. If you ever heard of the gun called the Klob, that's where it comes from. Because he worked in part on it from what I understand. But he also worked on Killer Instinct, and like the original franchise. But then he also came back to, I think, in like an executive producer role to assist with it. But he and I got the chance to meet in person during a traveling fellowship I did several years ago out to the States through the Winston Churchill Memorial Trust. And the best part of that was I got to not only talk to Ken, but then we actually got to sit down and have an entire Killer Instinct set, which you can find footage of parts of it on YouTube.
Do you have to share those with us? We'll post those.
Yeah.
Show notes.
I'll send you send you a list of things. But we played that match. I won that set. I think it was 9 matches to 8, which was. And then a couple of years later, we played at the Gaming and Disability Boot Camp at Microsoft, and I played against him, and I won it 5 matches to 4 after coming from 4-2 down. So he was beating me into the ground, and I managed.
Was it
a comeback?
Epic comeback.
Yeah. But the funniest part of it was that he'd bought this amazing controller with him, and he said to me on the last set, I was like, "This is for the set." And he looks at me and he goes, "And for the controller?" I'm like, "What?" And I'm like, "You can't be serious." And he's like, "Yeah." And I beat him, and he just hands me this controller that he's bought with him. So I have that as a souvenir, that was ridiculous. It was a fight stick. I don't play stick as a player. I use a custom build, which is
still a trophy.
Oh yeah, no, well, pretty much.
Yeah.
But that was the amazing thing of it. Like I managed to fight a player with sight and win.
That's incredible.
And that's where parity kind of started. I think parity in single player is catching up.
Right.
With stuff like God of War Ragnarok, it got close. It wasn't fully accessible.
So I want to go to God of War Ragnarok and talk about that because boy, it was around this time last year.
Boy,
my oldest son was he was hanging out with us for the Christmas holiday, and he brought with him his Xbox. And we have like a whole apartment upstairs in our house, and that's where he was staying. And he was playing his Xbox up there, and all of a sudden he goes, Dad, you got to come up here and see this. And he had found the accessibility features, and he and I sat there, and I was amazed, right? Being in the industry, I was absolutely amazed at what had been achieved with that. So can you, and that's on your CV, right? You were integral, can you just tell us about your involvement in that and what you did? And
yeah, I mean, I can try. I mean, I worked with the combat team mostly, giving feedback. So for a little context, I played through God of War 2018 with sighted assistance. I've played a lot of games with sighted assistance over the years, whether that's stuff like Rise Son of Rome, Jedi Fallen Order, the Gears series, Halo, all sorts of things. But I got working with a wonderful individual by the name of Janissary, who now works for Descriptive Video Works. And we got talking thanks to God of War, because I reached out and was like, I don't understand what's going on. What am I missing in these cutscenes? Because I was watching Jacksepticeye play through the game, and I was like, "What is he so amazed about? What's the details that I'm missing here?" So I reached out to Janissary. Well, not directly. I reached out to Reddit and said, what am I missing here? And then she got back to me and said, I'm happy to help. We can discuss from here. And the end result of that is what we called the Transcribing Games Project. And that is community-driven audio description, but it goes deeper than that. So it goes to character descriptions, to items, locations, weapons, enemies, those kinds of things.
Wow. You have a gaming community that is sitting there basically alt texting visual elements of the game so that
anyone can
appreciate the aesthetic. That's unbelievable.
I mean, that's the idea. I mean, the main thing we got done, our sort of crowning achievement for that, was the main story beats of God of War 2018 audio described over like edited footage. But the funniest part of it was we had people coming to us saying, "How do you turn this on in game? I can't find the option." And we were like, "That is the highest possible compliment you could pay us."
Yeah,
because it was that good. People were convinced that it was in there. I was like,
and then is that a bridge? And is that the bridge to putting it in there?
Well, I wouldn't say it's so much a bridge to putting it in there, but it's an example of how you could do it potentially. And the fun thing is, of course, Last of Us Part 1, I didn't work on that game, but Last of Us Part 1 got AD for the cinematics. So we're slowly but surely getting there, and Stories of Blossom has done it as well. Those are two games that have released sort of within the last year. And Brock the Investigator as well. I need to shout Cowcat Games out for Brock the Investigator. It's a punch and click because it's very action heavy in that respect. There are puzzles and stuff. But yeah, God of War wise, so I played God of War 2018 with Janissary's assistance on a lot of streams on Mixer and then on Twitch, including fighting all of the optional bosses, which are the Valkyries. And those of you that know God of War and God of War 2018's reputation will know that even on like standard difficulty, shall we say, so like normal or whatever the equivalents are, they are no pushover. And we had to really work hard to get around it, because there were a few things like cues that weren't, attacks that weren't given cues or things like that. So you couldn't tell. Say there were two attacks that sounded the same, but one was unblockable, so you had to dodge it. You wouldn't be able to tell which one was which. And that's what, a lot of the feedback happened with for Ragnarok. That's how a lot of that happened, because I streamed a lot of my gameplay and they got a lot from that, the development team. But then I was also, able to provide that information on, what's useful, kind of what is and what's there. So, the end result is it doesn't make it a fully accessible game, but the fact that I have just finished beating all of the optional bosses unbalanced as of last week, and I'm working through cleaning up the end game of Give Me God of War, which is the hardest difficulty. The fact I'm doing both of those and I've managed to do pretty much all of it in just about a year is testament to at least a big step in the combat, if nothing else. So I'm really, the good thing, the way I look at it is God of War Ragnarok isn't fully accessible, not by any means, unfortunately. It could be, you never know. There might be updates, patches, things that happen that may make it more accessible. But it's a massive step in the right direction for the series. So yeah.
Well, and I think that's an important concept. Like, a lot of people kind of have this binary view sometimes of accessibility. Like, we got to make this thing completely accessible or not.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
doing something is always better than doing nothing, and it will eventually lead to it being, something along the way, some version of it, in the future may be very close to fully accessible. My question for you, Sightless Combat, is, you clearly have a passion for gaming, and you've gotten into this wonderful place in your life where your passion and your work are kind of meeting together. But there has to be a lot of people who are blind out there playing games that just appreciate being able to play a game as a person who's blind. that aren't, contributing like that. Do you ever hear from those folks? Do you ever hear people, do they come to you and say, hey, I really enjoyed my experience with this game. Thank you for your contribution to it, or anything like that?
Every once in a while, yeah, I'll see people saying, "Oh, this is amazing." Like even just sighted people, they'll watch me play and they're like, "How are you doing this?" And I'm like,
Mhm.
"This has a sound cue," and they're like, "Wow, that's cool." And like if I say I worked on the game, they're like, "Oh, that's amazing." That's really cool to hear. So, and I will have people, where I've shown a game to, and that I've not worked on. Like, I've worked on a few games, and most of those, I think, full accessibility is still a way off for most games at the minute.
Right.
But where I've worked on titles that have significantly improved, people usually understand, and they're like, "This is a really good start." This is, I can see why this is good. Of course, you will get detractors. You'll get people saying, "Oh, why isn't it fully accessible?" But some like game development takes time. Accessibility takes time. And as much as I'm working in that field as well, I have to sort of remind myself of that.
Mm.
I have to keep that in the back of my head that even if I want to play, I don't know, an RPG or a Souls like or whatever, the theory is there that can make it happen. It's just a matter of getting it through to the right people. And I'm always happy to talk to anyone who's willing to listen,
Mm.
anyone who's willing to help me get that message across and connect me with people as well. Not just through RNIB, of course, but even externally too.
Yeah.
Because I talk a lot about it on social media. I've done a few YouTube videos on full agency versus sighted assistance or co-pilot or all sorts of things, just to try and get people to understand. So I feel like as time goes on, that will happen more in terms of people coming
Yeah.
up and saying, "Hey, this is really really cool." But I've even had, you know, where I've said about sighted people playing games alongside me, I've had people play Killer Instinct against me. This was a few years ago. I had one sighted player fight me, and then they played me blindfolded as like a challenge. I was like, "Look, yeah, you fight me blindfolded. I'm sure you can do it." And I went back to talk to that person later, and they actually still had the settings on from the last time I played them,
Oh,
which is really validating. Like the fact that they just left it on is brilliant
because
because
it helped. It was almost a
yeah,
curb cutout effect, kind of.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, and
Yeah.
that's
And for the listeners who don't know what
yeah,
that is, that's this common term for an accessibility feature like a curb cutout in the sidewalk, benefiting, unintentionally benefiting people who don't need it to accommodate for the disability it was intended for.
yeah. I mean, it's the thing of like accessibility can help pretty much anybody. So like if you have a sound cue in there, say for unblockable attacks in Jedi Survivor,
Mm.
then anyone can use that. Doesn't matter if it's actually an accessibility option or like in a menu specifically, or if it's just there.
Mm.
So the unblockable queue from Jedi Survivor is just there. It's not an option you turn on. It just exists. And I
That's
remember
brilliant.
when I was playing, my first time with Jedi Fallen Order, because it's in that game as well. I then realized what that meant. And I was like, is that a red attack? Because somebody said, oh, you keep getting hit by the red ones. I'm like, is that a red attack? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, is that a red one? Like a few seconds later when a different one happens. And I was like, oh, that's consistent. So then
It's
when I'm
different.
watching,
Yeah, that's
so then when
great.
I'm watching other people play, I'm like,
Yeah.
you keep getting hit by those red ones.
Yeah. How do
So
you know?
it's just
Yeah.
engagement. It's like, that's part of it. But also as well, of course, then you get people like using menu narration because they don't want to strain their eyes, or you get people
Mm.
using aim assist because they're having trouble locking on or whatever. There's all sorts of reasons why accessibility is great. And one of the reasons is because, everybody's going to need it at some point
Yeah.
as well.
Right.
I remember hearing a quote from somebody. I'm trying to think who it was now. But it comes back into my mind. It's like, we are all temporarily able-bodied. Yes, it sounds depressing.
Oh,
Yes, it
that's a
sounds
great way to put
morbid.
it. Yeah.
But the other way I like to put it to people who get slightly frustrated about accessibility being needed is, what if you woke up tomorrow and you had no sight at all? Like
Yeah.
you just woke up and you couldn't see anything.
You'd all of a sudden hear it, yeah.
Like in Day of the Triffids or whatever. You wake up and you suddenly gone blind. And you'd still want to keep gaming, right? There's no reason why you wouldn't. And the only way you're going to be able to keep gaming is if accessibility advances to the level that you can play a game start to finish, no sighted assistance, whatever difficulty you want, whatever settings you want, any of that. And that can only happen by degrees with accessibility features being added in as time goes on.
Yeah. I think, one of the really interesting concepts too, that I think you're sort of bringing up here is that it's important. What you're doing is important in terms of showing people how accessibility might work, or exposing everyone to accessibility and how it helps you and other people participate, play the games. But they're also, it's important, I think, to recognize that there's no magic wand, that accessibility is still a puzzle in many ways to be solved. Like, these games are complex, to your point. They do a whole bunch of things. They're literally recreating physics in an environment and all this stuff. So it's not like there's a bunch of answers out there and we just need to apply them. There's some answers, but a lot of what we need is just great minds thinking about how could this experience be accessible? How could we make this accessible? And I think that that's also an important concept, and I think an important byproduct of your work, where you're really showing the public how this works, or how it could work, or how you solved it to this point, or however you want to say it.
Yeah, like whether it's theory crafting, so say you're going through a menu and it's like, if only this did this thing, or if you're trying to use, like, if you're playing, say, Last of Us Part 1 and 2, and you want to, say you're like, if only this had a progression filter, so I could just tell so I just get the loot rather than the next door to the story or whatever. Even those kinds of comments can be very useful if able to be fed to the right people. And sometimes it's not even about accessibility, for the game itself. Accessibility, I've said for years, is not just about the games. It's about everything around the games. So alt text on your marketing images. Well, not your marketing images, your images, full stop. Alt text on your images. We mentioned it earlier. For those that don't know, alt text is just text that describes what's in an image. So you could say, let me just grab a prop from off camera here, a little 3D printed. Oh, there we go. Sorry, a piece was just.
But hold it up just a tiny bit. There you go.
I'm getting. Don't worry. There we go. I was just detaching a thing that had stayed connected to it. So this is a tiny little prop of BD1 from Star Wars Jedi Survivor. It's a little, or Fallen Order. It's a little. How can I describe this? It's a two-legged little robot with sort of hinged legs, a little droid with like a squarish head, little sort of long antennae poking up and backwards. And it's got little like eyes, mismatched eyes at the front. And it's all 3D printed, and the legs move, the head moves ever so slightly, the little antennae slightly wiggle. But the key thing is, that's 3D printed, that's free and online. And, I now have an idea of what this character looks like. Just for those that can see, I've put my hand next to him for scale. So you can see that he's actually quite tall, really. He's taller than he looks. And he does actually stand up. Let me see if I can get him to do it. There, yay! I wasn't sure if that'd work. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But yeah, so even having official, easy to buy, well-priced merch that allows you to understand the worlds, the characters, the locations. So there's a massive 1-to-1 gold Lancer from Gears of War 4 on the wall behind me. That is
we can
brilliant.
see it. It's just over your left shoulder, over your door, it looks like. Is that the one you're referring to?
Yeah. It's a massive, it's basically a massive gun with a chainsaw on the end.
Looks like a whole lot of fun to play with.
It is, but the fun part is when you pick one up for the first time, because they may not be exactly weighted as you would find in an actual, if it was ever real world kind of thing. But the fact of the matter is, you pick that up and you're like, that's heavy.
Mm-hmm.
And so it gives a real sense of, this is what these characters are running around with, and dealing with the enemies with. Even Thor's hammer, because you won't be able to necessarily see it because it's off camera.
I don't see it.
No. But it is. But I do have one of the God of War Ragnarok Thor's hammer replicas, and those are great because you think Thor's hammer and you think Marvel Thor maybe, but it's a different design. There's all the patterns on it, so you get all that lovely, wonderful detailing that the art department have probably put hundreds of hours in, and you get it because it's a physical thing that you can actually get hands on with, if you will. And that feeling of I'm included in this, even with like action figures and stuff,
included in the aesthetic,
all the little pop vinyls, even pop vinyls, they're caricature, yes, but you get a rough idea of this is this character's hairstyle. So if you said to me, say we're playing the same RPG and it's fully accessible, and you're like, oh, I'm playing as so and so, and I'm like, oh, the guy with the spiky hair, and you're like, wait, how did you know that? I'm like, because I've got a figure. So, stuff like that. You can, describe the characters in game. But it's just even better when you actually have a physical representation of it. Because then if a person said to me, draw your favorite character from a video game, I would be going on a reference that I have, actually sort of firsthand. I'm not going on a vague description from a piece of text in the game, or arguably even better, an accurate description. I'm not going on any of that. I'm going on, this is the proportions of it. This is how it all looks. The cool looking mechanical pieces that are coming out of his arms. I don't know. There's all sorts of stuff. So audio description in trailers as well. I could go on and on about this in the best way because there's so many ways to make things accessible. And you're right. The way to get people, having this happen is through worldwide collaboration. So, I will talk to anybody from anywhere in the world in terms of making their games accessible. It doesn't matter, whether you're AAA studio, whether you're one person indie, somewhere in the middle of there. I don't mind. I will talk to. I want to be able to play your games, and so do other people, with no sight. Because just because you have no sight doesn't mean you can't enjoy video games. That's basically my sort of
mantra.
Yeah,
well, Sightless Combat, we have to start wrapping up here. Unfortunately, I think I could do this with you for another couple hours.
As Captain America once said, I can do this all day.
Exactly. And one of the things, like I think about a lot of stuff, but making the game accessible is one thing. But the other thing I've always wanted to, because we're talking about worlds, right? We're talking about worlds we're moving through. I've always thought gaming is not like business. Like with business, it's like, oh, we've got to make this equivalent. And if it says, if a person with sight can perceive this, a person who's blind needs to perceive this, and you can't mess with that a whole lot. But with a game, you can have some fun. And I've always thought it would be interesting to have a game, because I have a lot of colleagues who are blind. So I'm actually navigating cities and going to conferences and all sorts of stuff with people who are blind. And, we experience the world together, but in a different way. It was so interesting to me. I'd love to see somebody lean into a game where they made the experience for a person who's blind equivalent to their experience, or equivalent to the way that they might react to the world, and then a person with sight would have the experience of somebody who has sight. So I could actually play a game with a blind colleague or friend where we're sort of experiencing it in the two different ways that we normally would, whether that's the way we react with the environment. I've always thought about, like, why couldn't you turn a controller into a white cane, for why could you have things that a person who's blind, to your red point, you're like a person who's blind might perceive something quicker because they're much more attuned to their hearing, whereas maybe there's something that shows up that the sighted person perceives quicker, so it becomes collaborative with that different
like a co-op game that's deliberately designed around that kind of thing. I'm thinking of not this specifically, but maybe like a Lego thing or something.
I feel like where it's cooperative and each person is contributing differently because of the way that they interact with the environment differently. And then if we did do an experiment like that, how would that start to inform accessibility in gaming? Because again, we can just push on any edge of this envelope that we want to and play around. Like there's no rules, where in business it's sort of like, you're trying to fit into this,
Yeah,
this
guidelines and,
criteria because
well,
there's a law around it, or there's you're worried about compliance, or you're worried about real true equivalency of messaging, and as you should, right? But with
of
gaming,
course.
it's like, hey, we can take the governor off this a little bit and start to really experiment. So anyways, um
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I agree. I feel like there's definitely a discussion to be had around that
yeah, I mean,
in
and wouldn't it be
future.
great to just build a game from the ground up that way?
Well, I mean, accessibility should be built in from the ground up. That's a key thing as well. Hire
Absolutely.
accessibility consultants as early as possible in development. Keep them on through the iterative process of game development and through post-launch as well. Accessibility isn't just
Yes.
a thing that you do to release and then you're like, no, that's it. You keep it going through post-launch, fix any problems, with the resources you have available. Be transparent with your community about the accessibility you're going to be able to give, and make sure that everybody's included in that worldwide feedback approach. So,
So with the last minute or two here, tell me where you kind of see the world of accessible gaming going in the next couple of years.
pun most certainly intended.
Mhm.
I see the world of accessible gaming going from strength to strength. Actually, we've seen even in the last couple of years, we've seen games embracing accessibility for gamers without sight, in particular, and channeling that. We've not seen all the big releases doing it. We've not seen every release doing it, but we're seeing more games doing it. That's the key difference. Every year, if we see more games doing it, those more will encourage other people to do more on their own games. And
Exponential.
just a
Yeah.
giant accessibility exponential useful snowball. There you
Yeah.
go. And that's where I see it going. I think give it maybe 3 or 4 years, because of how long dev cycles take. We might see another fully playable game with audio description like throughout it, maybe. Who knows? So
That'd be fantastic.
that kind of thing. Or like you said, there could be co-op games maybe in VR that are fully accessible. That kind of thing.
And that's my current platform. I absolutely love VR, and there's no reason why that can't be accessible, because it's working with all your senses just the way it does.
Exactly. I mean, the V in virtual reality, well, the V in VR doesn't stand for visual; it stands for virtual.
Virtual, yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
that's what
and you can have haptic feedback through
exactly. I mean,
through
I've
the
played
controllers and all sorts of stuff. It's brilliant.
I was going to say I've played one game a couple of years ago as part of a user research project that was playable without assistance, which is very cool indeed. But I'm looking forward to seeing other games embrace that. Like, I'd love to be able to do, me being the action combat fan I am, or like the set piece video game fan like I am, like Uncharted, those kinds of things. What if there was an accessible Uncharted in VR that would allow you to work off your calories? I don't know. That'd be great. Be able to exercise in VR. Give me a good reason to own a headset. So
yeah. Or why can't we make the interaction with the world more tactile? Why can't you, in your list of tools, why isn't there a white cane that would extend your ability to understand what's in front of you, to a reasonable angle? Like, there's all these things that I think are just open green field inside of VR that could be explored.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
I thank you so much. I really wish we could keep this going, and maybe there's a part 2 to be had here. But
pun intended. I'm game.
But boom.
Yeah, but there we go.
But I absolutely love what you're doing. I love you clearly approach it with just a wonderful attitude and nothing but fun all the time, right? It sounds like you take accessibility seriously, but you don't take yourself so seriously, right? That you can't have fun.
If you can't laugh at yourself, who can you laugh at?
Yeah, I'm around myself all the time, so I laugh a lot, right?
Well said, good one.
Yeah, and I love your Sightless Combat moniker. I think it's a great thing, and please make sure that you share anything and everything. We have some of your Twitch streaming and all that that we can include, but after this podcast, I'm sure there's people that are going to want to go check out all that you're doing. So we'll make sure we put that in the show notes. So whatever you want to share with us, please.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you want to watch me, come and watch me live firsthand on Twitch or on YouTube now, because I'm now simulcasting, thanks to that being allowed by the Twitch terms of service. That's a brilliant thing. You're able to come and watch me on either platform. Or, of course, follow me on Twitter as well. That's Sightless Combat, SIGHTLESSKOMBAT. And I also have a Discord server as well, which you can find through my various channels, where I organize my streams, where we all just chat about stuff. You can come along, say hi, introduce yourself. Just, generally hang out with like-minded people who are interested in accessibility, but also things like food, 3D printing, Mac stuff, all sorts of stuff, music as well, because I write my own music for my streams, which is a lot of fun. And sometimes you'll see me streaming that as well. But yeah, so Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, Sightless Combat, that's where you'll find me. But also, of course, if you want to find out what RNIB is doing, including stuff like Design for Every Gamer, the initiative that is a rallying cry across the video games industry to raise awareness of the need for greater accessibility for gamers across the spectrum of sight loss, and of course, including for gamers without sight like myself, then you can find out more by emailing gaming@rnib.org.uk.
Brilliant. Well, this is Mark Miller thanking Sightless Combat and reminding you to keep it accessible.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. It's been brilliant. Thank you.
This podcast has been brought to you by TPGI, the experts in digital accessibility. Stay tuned for more Real People, Real Stories podcasts coming soon.